My name is Christopher Clark with toxiCALL, and I will be demonstrating toxiCALL's case entry window. The purpose of this video is to train specialists on how toxiCALL can dynamically capture cases in real time. We will be following a specialist named Chris as he logs in for the day. This video will cover the progression of a case from start to finish. The case will simulate a scenario with multiple substances ingested. Through the lifetime of the simulated case, toxiCALL's functionality will be demonstrated. This video will cover default searches and quick search icons, case assignment, recent cases window, higher ground call recorder integration, case entry layout overview, keyboard shortcuts, validations, substance entry, clinical effects, saving cases and follow-ups, lab modules, key cuts, therapies, linked case files, managing validations, and finally, closing a case. So let's begin. First, log into toxiCALL with an already established username and password. Specialist Chris will be using toxiCALL in bypass local mode. When using toxiCALL in bypass local, a default search is used and will filter the case list based on the default search criteria. The default search can be changed to suit your preference. The Poison Center, where Specialist Chris works, uses the default search, open cases plus last 12 hours of updated cases. This default search will return all cases that are saved with a status of open and quick saved. Closed cases, which have been updated in the last 12 hours, will also be included. If at any time Chris needs to return to the default search criteria, he can do so by clicking the default search icon. Specialist Chris has been working on a study regarding acetaminophen cases and would like to review those cases now. First, he needs to load the acetaminophen search criteria. Using the search name 3.lookup, Chris can type part of the phrase in the field to compare. He can then load the Save Search criteria by double-clicking on his selection. To run the search, select the Search button. Once Chris is finished reviewing these cases, he needs to review the cases assigned to him. Instead of using the Save Search lookup, he can use a Quick Search icon. Quick Search icons are linked to Save Search criteria and are more easily accessible for popular day-to-day workflow. When he selects the Quick Search icon, the case list will return no results. There are no cases currently assigned to Chris. Chris would now like to assign cases to himself for management. This is accomplished by finding cases you wish to assign to a specialist. First, we need to load our default search criteria. In the initial SPY column, the names displayed in black indicate the specialist who created the case. When the name is displayed in red, the case is currently assigned to that specialist. Chris is now going to select a few unassigned cases and assign them to himself. By holding the Shift key, Chris can select a group of cases. By holding the Control key, Chris can select individual cases. Chris will now assign these cases to himself by right-clicking and selecting Assign Cases to Me. There will be a confirmation pop-up. Select OK. Alternately, cases can be assigned to another specialist. Chris is going to assign a few of Specialist Kendrick's open cases to Brooke. Chris can see that Kendrick has missed a few follow-up times. The follow-up column cells will be displayed as red when a follow-up time has passed. Select the cases, right-click, Assign to Specialist, and select Brooke. Chris will now begin to work on his newly assigned cases. Click on the Assign to Me Quick Search icon and the newly assigned cases will be returned by the search. When a call comes in, Chris will need to quickly determine if the call is a new case or related to a current case. An easy way to accomplish this is to use the Recent Cases window. The Recent Cases window is used for quick reference checking and can optionally remain open on a second monitor. To display the Recent Cases window, Chris can press Ctrl-R, or by selecting View and then selecting Recent Cases. In this video, we will demonstrate toxiCALL's integration with the Higher Ground Call Recorder. If you have the call recorder integrated, the Recent Cases window can be configured to open automatically when a call is received. Having toxiCALL automatically fill in caller name and phone number is an additional configuration option. Here comes the call now. Poison Control, this is Chris. How can I assist you?
Hi, my name is Jill Kwan, and my roommate drank a whole bottle of nail polish remover at my house, and she said she didn't want to live anymore.
Hello, Jill. What's your friend's name?
Melanie Hutchins.
Jill, what's a good number to reach you in case we are disconnected?
900-222-5555.
Are you at your house now?
Yeah.
Even before we have opened a new case, we have heard a lot of information from the call that will be important. Chris's workstation has Higher Ground Call integration, and the Recent Cases window has been loaded automatically. toxiCALL has already populated Jill's name and phone number. It appears as though Jill Kwan has previously called regarding her dog. Before Chris is going to open a new case, he needs to check if Melanie Hutchins has a case open. The yellow highlighting indicates that this section will be searched when pressing Enter. Let's remove the phone number from the search by unselecting it. The CID field searches both caller and patient names. Chris will type Hutchins and then press Enter. Recent Cases only searches cases that are on the network. If a user has created a case on the local and it has never been saved on the network, Recent Cases will be unable to find the case. It looks like there are no cases in the past month with name Hutchins. You can change the default options for duration by selecting the Options button. These options will be in effect next time Recent Cases window loads. The duration selection tells toxiCALL how far back the search should be ran for closed cases. Cases that have been saved with a status of quick saved or open will always be returned by the Recent Cases search. There are no cases for Hutchins in the past month. Chris will now create a new case by selecting the new case icon. The new case icon is also located outside of the Recent Cases window. You can use the keyboard shortcut if you prefer. This window is the most important part of toxiCALL to the specialist. In a moment, we will review each of the areas. But first, Chris will have toxiCALL fill in the gray space. Select the Scale Case icon. This option will utilize all potential space of the window. This workstation's resolution is low and the difference is negligible. If your monitor supports a higher resolution, the change will be more noticeable. toxiCALL can be configured to automatically scale the case to fit if desired. Every specialist will need to be familiar with toxiCALL's case entry window. Let's begin by introducing the main areas of toxiCALL. Each area will be described with the default keyboard shortcut. We will begin with caller data. Notice that the cursor start location is in the caller name field. Chris's workstation is set to start with the caller name. This setting can be configured at each workstation. The keyboard shortcut to move to caller data is Alt-C, which is identified by the underlined letter in caller. This area captures the caller name, phone number, address, and relation to patient. Alt-P is the keyboard shortcut for patient data. This area will capture patient information and patient demographics. Pressing Alt-I will take you to the call information area, where call type, caller site, exposure site, and reason for exposure can be selected. Alt-X will move the cursor to the exposure info area. This section captures the time and acuity of exposure. Pressing Alt-R will take you to the routes of exposure. This is where all selected routes will be displayed. Clicking in the routes area will display the routes of exposure window. Alt-B enters the substance entry area. This portion of the case entry screen captures the substance information. The verbatim field will be used for the search lookup. Additional substance details can be captured below. This section is where the saved substance list is displayed, including the verbatim, description, quantity, and others. Pressing Alt-C will take you to the clinical effects area, where selected clinical effects will be displayed. Clicking in this area will display the clinical effects window. Pressing Alt-T will take you to the therapies area, where the selected therapies will be displayed. Clicking in this area will display the therapies window. The scenarios section will be marked by Alt-S. This area has multiple selectable reasons that could have caused the exposure. Pressing Alt-M will take you to the medical outcome and management area. Here, you can capture the final medical outcome and duration of effect. This area also captures the healthcare facility. Alt-A is the keyboard shortcut for the free areas. The drop-down selection options for free areas can be configured to each poison center. The Override AAPCC validation checkbox can be selected to indicate that the case will override AAPCC non-fatal validations. Validations are the necessary fields needed in order to successfully close a case. Let's review an example of a validation that can't be overridden, and then one that can be overridden. This example shows the validation window with a message indicating that medical outcome must be blank if call type is not exposure. This example can't be overridden because there couldn't be an effect if the call was only drug information. This next example could be overridden. Management site is usually not managed on-site if the exposure reason is suspected suicide. Messages that include in parenthesis may override can be overridden by clicking in the Override AAPCC validation checkbox. This example is not a logical failure, but an unlikely scenario. The industry case checkbox can be selected to indicate that the case is related to an industry contract. This portion of the demonstration video again requires higher ground caller integration. The call recording indicator icon has different types of status. A gray telephone with the time of 0 indicates that there is no call in progress. When the current call in progress is associated to the case, a solid green background on the telephone is displayed. toxiCALL can be configured to automatically associate a call in progress when a new case is created. A flashing red background indicates that the call in progress is not associated with the case. Clicking on the indicator icon will associate the call in progress to the current case. For the purpose of recording our demonstration video, all times associated with the case could be inaccurate. The next section of the demonstration video will cover call information, caller data, and patient data. Along the way, we will enter in the information that is regarding to the case. Let's begin with validations. Notice the red in the call type dropdown. A highlighted red field indicates that this section is required to pass validations. Validations are necessary information that must be filled in before a case can be saved with the status of closed. Additional validation requirements can be created for each poison center. Chris can begin typing in the call type dropdown and the selectable options will begin to limit. Let's demonstrate the option for foreign drug. Getting back to our current case, we know that the call type is an exposure. Notice the new validations based on new information. toxiCALL validation colors can be changed to meet each specialist's personal preferences. Click on View, Required Field Color, define custom colors, and choose the one you like best. Now back to the case. We know that the caller and patient are at their house and we have a suspected suicide. Select the reason dropdown and select intentional suspected suicide. You can always choose to manually select a dropdown, but let's practice some keyboard shortcuts for exposure site and caller site. Press Tab to jump to the next field. Type O for own residence. Do the same for a caller site. Some calls might come from other locations such as healthcare facilities. The call site code is used to look up and select configured call locations such as healthcare facilities and emergency services. Let's do a quick tip to demonstrate call site code. Select the caller site as healthcare facility and click on the call site code 3-dot lookup. I'm going to select Bayview for our quick tip example. When call site code is selected, the address associated with that healthcare facility will be filled in for caller data. Let's undo this process and get back to our case. Chris will now fill in caller data. Under name, Jill Kwan is already filled in for us along with the phone number. toxiCALL has a unique feature that allows capturing previous history. We know that Jill Kwan had another call earlier this month regarding her dog. Pressing Ctrl-I will display the phone history window. This window can be configured to automatically pop up for the user by clicking here. Let's get back to the case. The copy arrows will allow us to copy Jill Kwan's information to the address field. Notice how the name field and the address information are pasted together. When we click on the caller information 3-dot lookup, toxiCALL has already separated the information. Getting accustomed to how toxiCALL splits these entries will allow you to enter information more quickly. Please refer to the documentation on how toxiCALL separates address information. toxiCALL can also do a zip code lookup to quickly fill in address information. Here's a quick tip demonstrating that feature. Press Ctrl-L after entering the zip code. If there is only one city and county associated with the zip code, you will be asked if you would like to overwrite. If more than one possibility exists, you can select the appropriate city and county. Let's return to our case in progress. Now add relation to patient as other. Chris will now fill in the patient data area. If the patient happens to be the same as the caller, we can copy over the information. But we know that the patient is Melanie Hutchins. Let's correct this. Chris has filled in a lot of information about the call, and he needs to learn more about the substance ingested. Let's listen to the next portion of the call. Okay, what's the name of the nail polish remover?
Equate, and the bottle says it has acetone.
What size is the bottle?
6 ounces.
Is Melanie there? Can I talk to her?
Well, she said she was tired and was moving slowly. Now she is laying down but barely breathing.
Has she taken anything else?
Maybe. There was an empty bottle of Roxy's here.
Okay, I need you to get her on her side because she could vomit and we don't want her to choke.
Okay, she's on her side now.
This is an emergency, so I would like you to call 911.
My boyfriend is on the phone with them, and they're on their way.
Okay. Gather any other medication bottles or pills that are around and give them to the paramedics when they arrive. Specialist Chris is now ready to enter in the first known substance for the case. This is done in the substance information area. First, Chris needs to search for the substance nail polish remover. The substance entered in the verbatim field will be searched when the specialist presses enter. Type in Equate Nail Polish Remover and press enter to initiate the substance search. We are now joining Chris after his search. After the desired substance has been selected, toxiCALL will import the description, generic code, product code, and display them as follows. Quantity allows you to select the unit measurement for each substance. We know that in this case the bottle is 6 ounces. Some possibilities include grams, mouthfuls, tablets, pills, capsules, and even unknown. Additionally, 6 followed by OU could be entered in the field location. Press Tab to complete the quantity dropdown. The formulation is liquid, and we know that the certainty is exact. Chris is now ready to save the substance. He will do this by clicking the Save Substance icon. Chris is now going to add Roxasets in the same manner. It appears as though Chris has searched the incorrect substance. If the incorrect substance has been inadvertently selected, you can use the New Substance icon to clear the substance information and perform a new search. Let's correctly add Roxasets. Let's now complete Roxasets based on the call. The quantity is unknown, formulation is tablets, and the certainty is estimate. Click Save. Percocet will now need to be deleted. Click on Percocet in the Save Substance History area and click on the Delete Substance. A generic code lookup has a few differences from a normal substance lookup. Let's review a generic code lookup for benzodiazepine now. In the verbatim field, Chris will now type benzo and press Ctrl G. The generic code lookup table will appear, limiting the selection based on search criteria. Double-click benzodiazepine. The description and generic code will populate. The product code will not populate. Click the Save Substance icon. Let's return to our case in progress. Some poison centers require the specialist to type in the notes section a synopsis of the call for later review. Notes are a good way for specialists to capture the medical narrative. Let's fill in some information from the call. Notice the timestamp when Chris began typing. These timestamps will assist in understanding the timeline of the case. Now Chris needs to capture the clinical effects. Click on the Clinical Effects selection area to display the Clinical Effects window. For each of the clinical effect that occurs, toxiCALL can capture the relation of the effect to the exposure. Let's do a demonstration of each and see how they are displayed in the clinical effects area. Related, if the clinical effect is related to the exposure. Not related, if the clinical effect is not related to the exposure. And unknown, if related, is denoted by both checkboxes marked. The clinical effects area now has 3 clinical effects. The effect displayed as red is related. The effect displayed as blue is not related. The clinical effect displayed as black is unknown if related. Let's back up and return to our case. Chris will select respiratory depression and drowsiness as unknown if related. Future lab results might be able to confirm if these clinical effects are related. All poison centers are going to have their own standards for capturing clinical effects. It appears as though Chris has made a mistake and selected respiratory arrest instead of respiratory depression. The demonstration video will address this later. Let's listen to more of the call. How long ago did she ingest the Roxasets?
I don't know.
Do you know her age?
She's 27, but she may be a few weeks pregnant. Does that matter?
How many weeks pregnant?
I don't know.
Do you know about how much she weighs?
She weighs around 150 pounds.
After listening to more of the call, there are a few more sections that can be completed. Detailed patient data and exposure information will be covered next. Chris will select human from the species dropdown, then female, and press tab. This is the box for weeks pregnant. He types 99, indicating unknown number of weeks pregnant. Now Chris will select age. Type the number 27 and select the age units dropdown. There are several additional options that can capture a range of years. Alternatively, typing 27Y and pressing tab will select years in the age units dropdown. This can be done with months and days as well. Notice how pressing tab will skip the age selection units dropdown. toxiCALL is designed to minimize keystrokes and mouse clicks to help expedite case entry. Let's do the same for weight. toxiCALL can do the conversion from kilos to pounds and vice versa. Select the unit you would like to be converted first. In this case, it's pounds. And then select the unit to which you would like converted. Select Yes in the dialog box. Next, Chris is ready to capture exposure time and acuity. Jill said she didn't know when our patient drank the nail polish remover or ingested the Roxasets. Click on the exposure time 3-dot lookup to display the select date time window. Here, the date can be selected, time can be entered, or adjusted with the arrows. Chris will select unknown for the current case. We are now going to enter the acuity based on ingestion. He is going to type A for acute. Routes of exposure for both substances are ingestion. To select ingestion, click into the route selection area. The routes of exposure window will display and Chris will select the ingestion checkbox. If other substances had different routes, toxiCALL supports multiple selections. Okay, Jill, thank you for helping. Do you mind if I call back in about 30 minutes to see how Melanie is doing?
I don't mind.
Which hospital is the closest to you?
I don't know, but the paramedics are here. Goodbye.
Now, Specialist Chris will update his notes, update the management site, save the case with the status of open, and create a follow-up time. Let's start with Chris updating his notes. Before saving, Chris needs to indicate the current stage of the management site. toxiCALL has many unique ways of capturing information in real time. Chris is going to select the status and management site as referred to by Poison Center to healthcare facility. At this time, this is the best selection that reflects the information from the call. Specialist Chris is ready to click the Save Case icon. This is the Save Case window. First, Specialist Chris is going to select the status of the case. In this situation, we are selecting the status as open because we would like to follow up at a later time. The default status is open. When cases are saved with the status of open, notes will be saved to historical so they cannot be edited by other specialists. He will then select the priority level of the case. The options available in the priority drop-down are user configurable. Now we are going to set the follow-up time. Clicking the yellow exclamation mark sets the follow-up time to immediate. This is not the desired follow-up time for this case. Let's clear that now. Clicking the Clear Follow-up button erases the follow-up time. Here are a few of the common follow-up times. Select 30 minutes. Notice how the follow-up time is set from the original start time. This only happens for new cases. We are now saving the case with an open status and the notes will be pushed to historical. Next time the case is open, we will review those changes. Specialist Chris has been returned to his default search with the Melanie Hutchins case at the top of the list. Unfortunately, Chris will be too busy to follow up with Jill, and he has asked Specialist Thomas K. to do the follow-up. The next portion of the video will begin with Chris reviewing his acetaminophen cases. Then a call will come in from Robert RN at Bayview Medical Center. Specialist Chris is currently reviewing his acetaminophen cases. Just then, a call comes in from Robert McCall, an RN at Bayview Medical Center. He is calling in regards to our patient Melanie Hutchins. Again, Recent Cases window has been automatically configured to display when a call comes in through higher ground call integration. Robert currently has 3 open cases that came from his medical center. This Poison Center will be able to quickly open and review any cases that came in from the healthcare facility's phone number. Let's listen to a few seconds of the call now. Poison Control, this is Chris. How can I help you?
Hello, this is Robert McCall. I'm an RN at Bayview Medical Center. I'm calling in regards to patient Melanie Hutchins and her non-critical care unit. The roommate, Joe Kwan, didn't stay at the hospital for long, and I wasn't able to learn what happened. Can you fill us in on some details?
Sure, 1 second. Chris is going to find the Hutchins case in the Recent Cases window. Notice he is unselecting the phone number, so Robert's phone number is not included in the search. He then types Hutchins in the CID name field and presses Enter. Chris then loads the case by double-clicking on it. Notice the red flashing call recording indicator icon. Let's associate the current call to this case. It looks like Specialist Thomas K. was not able to reach anyone and left a note for Chris. We can review historical notes and see Chris's notes from the previous call. Specialist Chris has now reviewed the case entry screen for any new developments, and we can get back to the current conversation between Robert and Chris. I received a call from Jill about 30 minutes ago. Miss Hutchins has ingested 6 ounces of nail polish remover and an unknown number of Roxaset. I recommend doing some rule-out labs of ASA, APAP, ketones, and ethanol. Can you fill me in on some new developments as well?
Okay, the patient is lethargic and there's no vomiting. The patient's sister came in and established that there were about 20 Xanax and 7 to 8 Roxaset pills missing. The Roxasets are the sister's, and she said Melanie doesn't normally take them. The labels are ripped off, so the milligram amount is unknown. I sent in an EKG report to your poison center, and I can read off the vitals.
Certainly. When were these labs taken?
On arrival, about 5 minutes ago. Blood pressure is 116/75, heart rate 115, respiration 14, temperature is 97.8, and 98% O2 saturation on room air. We have now heard some lab information, and we will be using toxiCALL's lab modules to capture that information. These labs are highly configured to each poison center's needs. Click on the Labs Module button to display the Labs Module window. Find the available template and double-click. Each lab entry requires a date and time of sample. The date can be entered manually or selected by clicking on the Display Calendar 3-dot lookup. Now select the appropriate date. If the time is known, fill in the time. Now Chris can fill in the lab results. Pressing Tab after each entry. He is now ready to save, and Chris will select Done. And then save by selecting Yes. The Labs module for Chris's workstation has been configured to prompt the user if they would like to paste the lab results in the Historical Notes section. Selecting No will save the lab and withhold pasting. Let's select Yes and see those changes. The entered lab work can now be quickly viewed in the Notes section. Additionally, the Labs button now displays one entry in parentheses. Based on the information provided by Robert, there is another substance to be entered along with an additional clinical effect. Let's enter those in now. We suspect that Xanax is now the main substance, but do not know until the UDS and other lab results are available. Let's add the new substance and change the number of Roxasets. We are going to add Xanax through toxiCALL's Historical Substance feature. Clicking the Historical Substance icon allows for reselecting a previously used substance. The verbatim field must still be entered. Chris has recalled that he had a previous case where the substance saved was Xanax. The Historical Substance window saves substance searches on a per-session basis. When toxiCALL is closed and reopened, the list is cleared. Let's now add the estimated quantity, formulation, and certainty. The quantity was 20 tablets. Remember, you can type tabs and press tab to select the drop-down item. We know that the certainty was an estimate. We are now going to save the substance and edit Roxasets. Next, we are going to capture the new clinical effect based on heart rate. Remember that unknown, if related, is both checkboxes.
Can you please read me the QRSD and QTC from the EKG there, Robert?
QRS duration is 72, adjusted QT is 401.
Specialist Chris will find the EKG that Robert sent and link it to the current case in just a moment. Chris just needs a few readouts from the EKG and is going to capture the QRS duration and adjusted QT wave with the key cuts function. Key cuts are quick snippets of commonly used information to be captured in the notes. We will be using the quick EKG key cut. The lab module also has the ability to capture this information, but this example's intention is to introduce the key cuts concept. Chris will now select the key cut button and select Quick EKG. The key cut window provides a preview of the information that will be pasted into the notes. Select OK. Let's get back to the call and gather some more information.
Okay, I'm going to recommend 2 more labs based on some of the new information. Coagulation factors and electrolytes. Have you started IV fluids?
Yes, we did a 2-liter bolus.
Alright, that's all I need. I also recommend some monitoring. Watch for CNS and respiratory depression. If respiratory depression occurs, I would recommend intubation. Do not administer flumazenil or Narcan because of the risk for seizure. I will follow up in 2 hours.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
We have just heard a provided therapy from the call with Robert, and Chris needs to add the therapy that was provided to our patient. toxiCALL captures the relationship of each therapy provided from the specialist to the patient. This section of the video will cover an example of each possible therapy relation type before finally selecting the correct therapy and relation for our case in progress. Click on the Therapies selection area. toxiCALL captures therapy relations of type recommended, performed, recommended and performed, and recommended and known not performed. Let's show an example of each type. The recommended relation type would be used when the specialist has recommended the therapy be completed. The performed relation type would be selected if the therapy has been completed with no recommendation from the specialist. The recommended and performed relation type is denoted by checking the R and P columns. This section is used when the therapy was recommended and then performed at a later time. The recommended and known not performed relation is used when a recommendation was given by the specialist and it is known that this recommended therapy was not performed. Checking other combinations will yield an invalid response. Let's demonstrate how an invalid response appears. We will now press OK and see the therapies and their relation types in the selection area. Black is recommended, red is performed, magenta is recommended and performed, blue is recommended and known not performed, and an invalid selection will display as invalid. Let's undo this demonstration and add the correct therapy and relation. IV fluids were given without a recommendation from Specialist Chris. The call has ended and Specialist Chris will link the EKG file that the hospital has sent to Chris's Poison Center. The Link Case Files button allows specialists to attach files. This is the Link Case window. Click Browse to locate the file to be attached. toxiCALL has the ability to attach any file type. By default, toxiCALL always displays PDF files. Let's view all file types. And find the EKG file. This is an SCP file that is common to EKGs. Select the file to be associated and select Open. Chris will now add a meaningful file description. And will now add the file to the case. When the case is saved to the network, toxiCALL will automatically upload a copy of this file to the shared folder location. If you would like to view the file, you can review it by double-clicking or clicking the Open button. toxiCALL can open the file viewer for any file type. For example, Adobe Reader for PDF files, Microsoft Word for Word documents, and so on. toxiCALL requires the necessary associated viewer to open the file. In our example, Chris's workstation has a program that is installed on his computer that can view the .scp file extension. Let's load the Melanie Hutchins EKG by double-clicking. After Chris has finished reviewing the EKG, he will close the program and get back to toxiCALL. The file has already been added and we can select Close. Notice the Link Case Files now has a number 1 in parentheses. Specialist Chris will now update the Management Site section, add to the medical narrative, and then save the case with a new follow-up time. Let's start by updating the Management Site to admit it to Non-Critical Care Unit. In our example, the initial healthcare facility is Bayview. Begin typing the facility in the field and then press Enter to display the healthcare facility lookup window. Notice how our search will limit the selection. Selecting All will clear the search and display all healthcare facilities. If only the phone number is known, the search will limit based on the number entered. Chris can now select Bayview and double-click. Let's update the notes and then save the case. He has now updated his notes and presses the Save Case icon. Chris could select the follow-up time of 2 hours, but for this demonstration he will click on the follow-up 3.lookup and select the time manually. The hour arrow has added 2 hours. Select OK. Chris will now select yes to save the case once again. We will catch up with Chris in 2 hours as he begins his outbound call to Robert at Bayview Medical Center.
Bayview Medical Center, this is Robert.
Hello, this is Chris with Poison Control. I'm doing a follow-up on a patient, Melanie Hutchins.
Hey Chris, we're getting real busy. Let me just read off some information I know you need. She is stable, sleeping, and waiting for the psycho valve. Current heart rate is 97, still no vomiting. The UDS test was positive for benzodiazepine. ASA, APAP, ethanol, all negative. Liver function test, AST 21, ALT 18. Lights and coags are within normal limits. Sorry, I have to go.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Bye. After speaking with Robert at Bayview, Specialist Chris has decided that the case is ready to be closed. The lab tests have confirmed that Xanax is the main substance. We can now push the substance to the number 1 location. This is the substance number box. Let's change the location to 1. Once this is saved, the current substance at location 1 and 2 will be pushed down to 2nd and 3rd. This process can be repeated in order to reach the desired locations. We'll change roxacettes to number 2 in a moment. Roxacettes has been pushed to the number 3 location, and we want to place that at the number 2. Now that the patient is stable, the medical outcome and duration of effect are clear. Chris has deemed that the outcome is moderate and the duration was less than 8 hours. Unfortunately, Chris forgot to select the duration, and we will get to that in a minute. The final healthcare facility was also Bayview Medical Center. Specialist Chris will once again update his notes, change the clinical effects to related, and then will attempt to save the case as closed. Now let's change the clinical effects to related. Chris thinks his case is ready to be closed. All cases must pass validations before they can be saved with the status of closed. Chris selects the Save Case icon, changes the status to closed, and selects Yes. It appears as though our case has not passed validations. The validation window describes the necessary validations that still need to be completed. Let's take the time to review these validations. If a specialist wanted to check whether the current case can pass validations, press Ctrl-K or select File and then select Check Validation. The window can be dragged to the side as to not inhibit workflow. Clinical effects duration must be specified if medical outcome is minor, moderate, or major effect. It looks like Chris did not select the duration. Press Update to check again. Medical outcome should be major, death, or unable to follow, potentially toxic based on the clinical effects selected. Validations are a very useful tool. As you can see, respiratory arrest is a much more serious clinical effect for the moderate outcome. This validation has provided Chris with a logic check from his 2 selections. Let's change the clinical effect and then update again. We have passed validation successfully. We can now close the case, and Specialist Chris is wrapping up his day. Mastering the case entry window will allow you to quickly capture call information. toxiCALL's single entry window is designed to provide a full case overview without the need to tab or open new windows to learn the important information. Save the case with a status of closed. The case status can now be seen with a status of closed. We have followed a specialist through the entire life cycle of a simulated call, demonstrating some of toxiCALL's exclusive features in capturing exposure information. If you would like to review any sections, please visit the links provided. This concludes the toxiCALL case entry window training video. I hope you have enjoyed learning about all the unique features toxiCALL has to offer. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact our support team. Thank you.